I'm so beautiful without you.
Let's get started on our foolproof technique on how to make your blank paper beads. G'day, I'm Donna from Australia, and I'm going to show you how to make these beautiful paper beads. And what I mean by the foolproof technique, it's in the rolling. And in this tutorial, I'm going to help you master this technique. To make the blank beads, you'll need a bamboo cooking skewer, white copy paper, and your favourite glue. And the shape of the bead is just a plain 1-inch wide tube. So you don't have to make triangles or anything like that. Just cut your paper 1-inch wide, the full length of your A4 sheet. We've got no fancy tools, so we're just going to use this little bamboo skewer. Before we add the glue, I want to show you this neat little tip. Start rolling the paper first. It trains it to curve. It's a really good way to get started. So when you take your skewer off, see how your paper's got a nice little curl on it? And then once you've got this curl started, put some glue on the top edge of the paper and just smooth it out with your finger. You don't need a lot. Make sure it's on the top side. Put your skewer back on the underneath side of the paper. You're going to get glue on your fingers, don't worry about it. Keep going. Now start rolling. Now the tension you need to roll is not too tight, not too loose. You just want it so you can move your stick backwards and forwards. Here's important step number 2. Now this is easier said than done. Keep the edge of the paper that's rolling around on the stick parallel with the long straight strip, because I'm going to show you what will happen as you start rolling. It's so easy to go off this path. See how it's creeping off to the left, which is giving you these little steps in your paper. Just pull your stick out and with your left hand, hang on for dear life, just put one end of the bead on the flat surface of your table, get your bone folder and just tap it down gently at the top. The secret here, loosen off the fingers on your left hand ever so slightly as you're tapping. Don't let it go too much or your whole roll will spring wide open. Then hold on tight again, pick it up and put your skewer back inside the centre of your roll and continue on. Try and keep your paper level with the ends. And as hard as I try, I keep on veering off to the left and I get these little steps again. I'm going to pull my skewer out, hold onto the bead with my left hand, loosely tap it down again on the table. And this time I'm not even going to bring the skewer back. I'm just going to keep on rolling up my tube. And when I get to the end, I'm just going to put it back on the table again and tap the ends down so they're nice and level. I'm going to get my glue, put it on the end of the paper strip, feather it out so it reaches all the edges, and then I'm just going to stick it down. I'm using belly art glue. This is so strong, it's going to stick this paper end down and there's no way this little bead is going to come apart. By the time you made a couple, you're going to get better. By the time you've made 14, like I did, you're going to get even better. Honestly, you are going to be amazed at how many different ways you can embellish these beads. I'm going to show you 11 different ideas. Choose one of your blanks and I'm going to show you how to make this particular bead here. I made this little book in last week's video and a couple of you asked how I made this bead. So that's why I've made this video today. I've got some scraps of sari silk here. So I'm just pulling out 2 little pieces, and I've got some 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗀 markers. They're an alcohol marker, and I'm going to be showing you how I use these markers in next week's video. But for now, I'm using them to colour the top of my little bead so that when you wrap your fabric around, you don't see any white paper if you miss a little bit. So I picked a colour that's going to go with my sari silk, and I just colour the top and a little bit down the edge of the paper bead. And I'm using the Belly Art glue. I put a bit on my paper bead and then I start wrapping my sari silk around. I like it all folded and crinkled up, so I leave it like this, and all the frayed edges show up and it looks so cool. So I'm just going to continue wrapping it around, and I don't do it real tight. I want it to be nice and loose, and this piece only just fits. So I maneuver it around until I get to the very end. Then I put a bit more glue on it and I just press it all down and hold it until the glue grabs. I've got some beautiful little flower trim here, so I'm just going to cut one off. The colour, it's got a bit of the same colour of the sari silk on it, so it's perfect. And I'm going to turn it into a charm before I glue the flower on. Now let me show you how to make your little bead into a hanging charm so you can add it to your junk journal. I'm going to show you how to use 2 types of posts. This one's a head post, and the little head post, it just looks like the end of a nail. And this one is an eyelet post. You'd use the eyelet post at the top so you can hang it like a charm, and you can also make it a double-ended so you can hang a charm off the bottom as well. The eyelet post comes in different colours and it only has an eye at one end. But I'm going to show you how to use it in your bead, and then we're going to make another eyelet at the opposite end. The pin isn't very long, so we're only putting a little bit at the top of our paper bead and a little bit at the bottom. I'm using 2 tiny black beads, one for the top and one for the bottom. I'm using a bead cap, and a bead cap, all it is a little bit of trim that's normally sitting on top of a big bead, but we're going to sit it straight on top of our paper bead. So these are called bead caps. Put your pin inside your paper bead. First thing you're going to notice is it's very floppy. Normally, these pins would go in a glass bead, and the hole in the glass bead is small, but our paper bead, the hole is very big. But I'm going to show you how we're going to get around it. Get your fabric bead ready, pick up your pin and put the tiny bead on first. It's going to get pushed right up towards the eyelet. Put your bead cap on with the pretty side facing the little black bead and push it all the way up to the top. Now get your paper bead with the top facing up and put the pin inside your paper bead. See where the little black bead is and the bead cap? This is what holds this silver pin right in the center of the really big hole of your paper bead. Holding the pin, if I turn my bead upside down, you'll see the bottom, the pin is flopping around this big hole. It's secure at the top, so I've got to repeat the steps at the bottom. I put my bead cap on and make sure the pretty side is facing outward, so the flat part of it is touching the paper bead. Put your tiny little black bead on and push it down towards the bead cap. Now I'm just holding on to the pin. If I don't, everything's just going to fall straight off. So now we've got to put another eyelet in this end here, or everything will fall off. If you don't know how to make eyelets by hand, I recommend this Beadsmith 1.5mm pair of looper pliers. I'm going to show you how they work, and they're great if you're a beginner. If you're right-handed, pick your bead up in your left hand, push all of your beads towards the left, and just use your fingernail to hold this last little black bead here. Thread the stick of your pin into your pliers. There's a hole on the right here that you've got to go through. So once that pin is through that hole, it's going to look like this. The bead has to rest on the left-hand side of the tool. And then gently squeeze your pliers. It'll cut off the excess of the pin and it'll fold your eyelet. And then you just take the pliers off, and these pliers just cut and bent an eyelet in the end of your pin for you. Now we've got our little bead made. I'm going to glue on my flower. I don't glue it on first because the chances are while I'm making my bead up, I could accidentally pull it off. So I always glue my embellishments on last. Press that in place and make sure it's going to stay put. So now I've got an eyelet for hanging off a pin at the top, and I can hang my charm off the bottom. Okay, we're up to bead number 2 already. Same as I done on the first bead. I'm going to colour the end, and I'm using the 𝗀𝗶𝗱𝗏 marker to go with the green seam binding. For bead number 2, I'm going to use seam binding instead of sari, and I'm going to use the bead pin instead of the eyelet. Keeping it simple again, I'm putting a clear crystal on first and pushing it right up to the head of the pin. Then I'm putting my bead cap on, pretty side towards the crystal bead, and then I'm putting the pin into the bottom of my bead this time. So the head is going to hold the bottom of my bead in place. Then I'm going to repeat and put the bead cap on the top of the paper bead, then a crystal, and now I'm going to use my bead looper to make a brand new eyelet in the top of this pin. Same as before, thread the pin through the looper, it cuts it off and it bends the eyelet in which is now the top of this bead. So this is what I'm going to use to hang my little charm from whatever I want in my journal, and I'm going to glue this little paper flower on here. I actually changed this one to this one here with the green diamante in the center. I put a black bulb pin on it, and doesn't it look great? For bead number 3, I'm going to move away from the fabric and I'm going to cover it in this mini corrugated cardboard. If you've got some of this stuff, you'll want to use it up, and this looks so cute. Cut out a strip with the corrugates going from the top to the bottom, and then on the last bit, flatten it. You want this little tiny piece to be flattened. I've cut it off to be the same height as my little bead, and you can see the piece that I just flattened. When I wrap it around, the high piece of the corrugate is going to glue over the top of the flattened piece. So all you got to do is go ahead and glue this little bit of cardboard onto your paper bead. I've coloured my top with my 𝗀𝗶𝗱𝗏 markers, just like I've done on the other ones, to hide the white paper. I'm going to decorate the pin a little differently. This is called a spacer, a bead spacer. I put a pearl bead on first, then a spacer. This is also a spacer, but it's just a thicker one. So I put it on next. So I've got a bead, a little spacer, a bigger spacer. Now I'm putting a bead cap on. Now I'm going to put my paper bead on. You've got to work out which one's going to be your top. So this is either going to be your top or your bottom. You've got to work out which you like best. Now that's going to be my top. Now I'm working on my bottom. I didn't have anything that I could put on the bottom that I liked. So I found these little plastic discs. So I painted them silver. They look all right. I'm going to put one of them on and another little bead spacer that matches the top. I'm going to put it on the bottom. Then I use my looper tool again to put an eyelet in the bottom, and then all I've got to do is add an embellishment. And I've made this embellishment using my 𝗀𝗃𝗃 markers, but I'm not going to show you how I done it today. How I made these little flowers are going to be included in next week's video. So I'm just going to glue it on my bead and leave it here to dry. Now it's all dry, I can hang it off my bulb pin and it's ready to go on one of my favourite journals. Bead number 4. I'm going to show you how you can use a brad as a bead cap and our beloved Edith Holden book page. This one's really easy. Wrap your blank bead with a little bit of scrap. Yes, you can use your scrap book pages. Just put some glue on the back and wrap it around your bead. Colour the top and the bottom. I'm using an eyelet, it's just an offcut, and I'm using this brad. Look at this brad, it fits perfectly in the bottom of my bead. I'm just using my belly art glue to do this. I'm squirting a generous amount down into the hole of the bottom and around the rim of the bead. And I'm going to just push the brad into this bottom hole. And then I'm just gonna leave it to dry. I'm not gonna mess around with it. Now for this eyelet pin, it's a little bit long, so I'm measuring it and I'm just going to cut off with my little snips enough that it just fits inside this bead and the little eyelet is just hanging out the top. Using my belly art glue again, I'm going to fill the hole and around the rim of the top of the bead, and the glue at the top is just to hold my bead cap in place. So I put my bead cap on and then I'm just going to push my short pin with the sharp side down into the hole and the eyelet is just going to hang out the top. Once I've got the little bead cap and the eyelet centered, I'm just going to prop this up and leave it to dry. Now this one is important that I leave it overnight. I will not try and hang this off a journal for a good 24 hours because I'm asking this belly art glue to hang on to this pin forever. Bead 5. I'm going to show you these cute little Christmas beads. They're made of fabric. I went through Mum's stuff and I found this little fabric angel that was backed on a piece of Jack paper. Now Jack paper, all it is a sticker. So I cut off a tiny little piece of this fabric, the same height as my bead and wide enough to wrap around the bead. Then I just peeled the paper off the back of the fabric and wrapped it around my bead blank. Now if you haven't got any of this double-sided sticker paper, just glue your fabric directly onto your blank bead. Once you're at the end, I like to add a little bit more belly art glue just to make sure it's going to stay like this forever. Mum also had a collection of brads. I found this vintage brad. It's perfect. The colour and the size was perfect. So I'm filling the bottom with glue and around the rim and I just push my brad in place. I didn't even need to colour this one. It covered it perfectly. I'm going to do the same as the bead before. I'm snipping off my eyelet and I'm going to glue it in place. This glue is white when it goes on, but it dries clear, so I always add a bit of colour when you can see through the bead caps. So I've got my fingers crossed that this one is going to stay stuck. I'm not hanging anything heavy off this bead, so it should be light enough to just put a bulb pin in it and hang it off my journal. And I'm just going to prop this one up for 24 hours to dry. If the pin does come out, I'll re-glue it with a really good glue, E6000. I made another Christmas one. This one's going to be a bit heavier because I'm going to wrap this little charm around with a piece of ribbon. So what I've done for this one is I put a pin all the way through the bottom up to the top, and I finished it the same way as I done the other beads at the beginning of this video. So if you're making light beads, you can cheat a little, but if you're making a heavier bead like this one, you've got to put a pin all the way through from the bottom with a stopper on it so that nothing can pull through your bead. You don't want it to break later on. So whether you like your Christmas beads in gold or silver, either way, they look really good. Now I'm going to whiz through some embellishment ideas for you. So bead number 6, I'm using some Japanese paper to go with a little book charm that I made in last week's video. I'll put the link below for you. So I used this same paper as I made this little book charm out of last week. I coloured the top of my bead, and to pull the pink out of the paper, I put little pink beads at the top and the bottom. And when you turn the bead around, you can see what I mean. It really pulled the pink out. You don't notice it so much until you put a matching bead with it. This one, very simple. I can add a charm on the bottom as well. Bead number 7. I know you all got some of these. The little sticker stamps. Just colour the top of your bead to match the border of your stamp. You might have to trim off 3 sides of your stamp, and then peel off the back of your sticker and wrap it around your bead. Then finish making your bead up however you like, and boom, and you've got yourself a little junk journal style charm. Add a little beetle charm on the bottom. Oh, it is so simple and sweet. Bead number 8. What if you don't have any stickers? You can use a real postage stamp. Just find something with a very small image on it. Just like this little stamp here with these gorgeous roses on it. Just make sure your bead is the same height as the width of your stamp. Wrap it around, glue it in place, and then just finish it off. Look how gorgeous this little bead looks. It would look amazing with a butterfly charm at the bottom, or a little crystal bead, a beetle bead. It doesn't matter. Whatever you love, you add it to the bottom. Bead number 9. Use old bus tickets or theatre tickets. They are beautiful. You may need to cut a little bit off the end, but you don't lose much. If you make your blank bead the full width of your ticket, you'll only lose a little bit of the length. These look adorable. And of course you can hang your favourite charm off the bottom. I love this one. It turned out amazing. Number 10, anything goes. I'm using a cigar wrap. When I'm finished with it, you wouldn't even realise that it was a cigar wrap. Start by colouring your bead. I'm using the 𝗂𝗁𝗸𝗀 alcohol markers to colour my entire bead, as well as the top and the bottom. So you just cut your ends off. This bit at the top, I just fold it over so that it's got a straight line around the top, and I kept the shape of the bottom. You can see where I've cut the wrap part off on either end. Then you just wrap it around to make sure it fits. Then put some glue on the back of the paper, not on the bead. Put it on the back of the paper, and then glue the cigar paper onto your paper bead. And that's it. Make your bead up. Isn't it beautiful? It's got that beautiful gold paper that shines. I didn't have to put anything on this paper at all. The paper done all the work. Here's a bonus idea for you. Bead number 11. You don't have to have fancy papers. Look at this one. It is a textured paper. It's pretty much one colour with a second colour in the texture. And then I put this bling on. They're stickers. They're just cheap stickers from the $2 shop. I used a bit of the Barely Art glue on the back to make sure they're going to stay put for a long time. This one is simple. It looks beautiful, and it's going to look fantastic hanging on a vintage journal. So enjoy this bonus bead. I know you are going to come up with so many different variations that you're going to have my head spinning. I have to stop at 11. I could have kept going. I've got another 3 beads to decorate. I'm going to keep these blanks in my container so that as I'm making my journals later on, I can make them as I go. I can't wait to chat to you all in the comment about what ideas you've got floating around in your head.
I'm so